Hey everybody, welcome to Immortals Inc. podcast. Once again, I have Mikey with me on the, I hate saying Mike, that sounds repetitious.
Nah, I feel like you've never said Mike. Well, you said Mike probably a few
on
times.
the keyboard. I
You're
think I
Carlos.
said keyboard. Yeah, I'm Carlos, by the way. And today we have Travis Miller again, famous for being a grumpy wizard.
Ooh,
Yeah.
Are you famous for being a grumpy wizard? Is that true?
I don't know about famous.
Oh,
Infamous. Infamous. And we're going to talk about some OSR.
Hey, that was like an acronym, like trend right there.
Old school Renaissance.
What does that mean? What is old school Renaissance,
Take it away,
Travis?
Travis.
Well, it is a movement in tabletop gaming that uses the open gaming license, which is imperiled.
Whoa. Go ahead. Just play.
Basically what it is a bunch of people who were into older versions of D&D, from the earliest one in 1974 through really the second edition of AD&D, wanted to, back in 2006, wanted to publish adventures and supplements for those older editions. So they used the OGL to basically clone those old games. And around that movement of people, there grew up a bunch of blogs at first, and then people took those original rules and then tweaked them in little ways, added stuff to them, took the games in different directions that TSR wasn't either going to take them, or things like Lamentations of the Flame Princess, which kind of goes in a horror direction, or some other places that kind of go in some other games that kind of go in a psychedelic direction. And then there's people who just sort of continue on the same sort of path that TSR did. There's a big broad range, but at the base, it's the old rules and the old mindset and play style of the old rules.
So basically, first and second edition D&D.
Basically.
Is what it is.
Basically old stuff.
Old stuff.
Yeah.
Old stuff you got sitting over here.
Yeah, all of his old stuff. I don't know if they notice every single episode. but
Sometimes I
that's
get some comments I see. They're like, look at all that
Ooh.
stuff. Like, yeah, I know.
I feel like I'm going to need to do a detailed video of it, you know?
We're going to talk about getting started. I don't think it's hard, I think getting started with this, you probably have to forget all the new stuff. I think it just simplifies the stuff we have now to play old school Renaissance.
Yeah.
Funny story. Forever I thought that was old school role play.
There are some people call it old school rules. Some people call it old school revival.
Well, I was corrected because I thought I knew what I was talking about one time. I go, yeah, old school role playing, right? And they're like, what? Are you
Are you a narc?
Are you a barbarian?
Old school reluctancy.
I know, that's what I said. But anyway, yeah, go ahead. Old school Renaissance.
So the reason why you would want to play some of those is they're easy to hack and mod. The game's really, the original game was simply a game that they sort of hacked together from their own experience playing miniatures games.
Historical miniature games.
Right. And that was come out of a tradition of like diplomacy variants and guys sending in stuff into zines and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So early D&D was all about making your own stuff.
I think like old school D&D was basically like they had war games, and instead of like Germans or French or whatever, they just put orcs and elves.
It evolved out of that. Yeah, for sure. So it's a different play experience. And so the way you get started in it really is what I recommend is playing what's called a retro clone. And a retro clone is kind of what it sounds like. It is a clone of the old rule sets that TSR put out, either the original game or one of the variants that they put out in the 15, 20 years after.
What's a good example of that?
So, so the ones that are probably, I would say,
not that you're suggesting they're better, just what do you think is like? What would you like to play?
Swords and Wizardry Complete is the one that I play the most. That is the original white box D&D plus the early digest size pamphlets and some other stuff pulled in from other places, sort of combined together, cleaned up, made simple and easier to use, and laid out. Swords and Wizardry Complete is the one I play a lot. Another one that's become very popular, even some 5e channels have tinkered with it a little bit lately, is called Old School Essentials, and that uses what's called BX games, or the Basic Expert sets.
Oh, the BEG.
No, that's a different one.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's similar but different. BX is the basic set that came out in 78, 79, and then there was the Expert that came out in 81.
Yep.
And then the BECME sets, Basic Expert, Companion, Master, Immortals, those came out in 84 and eventually got combined into one book called the Cyclopedia. Yep.
But they've the rules cyclopedia, D&D rules.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Okay, that makes more sense. But they've reprinted some of those the BG or BG.
BX. Yeah, BX. you can get them through DM's Guild, print on demand, or PDF.
Yeah, because I see a lot of them white box edition, and I'm like, that's not the original white box. But
right.
Okay, that makes sense now. See, I've learned something today. Write that down.
So the Old School Renaissance publishers made retro clones because in 2006 and those early 2000s, Wizards of the Coast didn't allow you to buy PDFs, and the only way you could get those books was through eBay or used shop,
secondhand,
scheme shop, secondhand. And then the other thing about it is you couldn't actually publish your own stuff for them. It was much harder to publish your own stuff with them. So the Open Gaming License made it a lot easier to do that.
I was going to say, that got covered by the Open Game License too, right?
So it got covered by the Open Gaming License. So those games. Another one that I really like is called Basic Fantasy Roleplay.
Is that from Chaosium?
No, that one, that's Basic Roleplay.
Yeah.
So this is Basic Fantasy Roleplay, and it's a clone of Basic Expert. And that's another Basic Fantasy Roleplay is another great one. That one's almost practically free. They're very big into open source gaming. So everything that's put out through Basic Fantasy Roleplaying is Creative Commons, and all those companies right now are in the process of scrubbing the system reference document out of their games and then re-releasing them so that they don't have to deal with OGL nightmares. Swords and Wizardry is there's going to be a new printing of that coming out in the next 6 months or so.
Okay. Did they have? That's another. I think they had some trouble or something like that at one point, but that's another talk.
I recommend playing a retro clone. There's some other good old school Renaissance games out there. Adventurer Conqueror King is one that I really like.
Actually, I never heard of that.
That one kind of pulls in some other interesting skill systems and some stuff where he sort of builds on top of it. It has an interesting economy system in it, and there's a miniatures war game built into it as well. It's pretty interesting.
You lost me at the economy. No, I'm kidding. I'd be like, no.
And I know you've covered some other old school games like Lamentations of the Flame Princess.
Yeah, if I was probably when I think of that, I always think of that Lamentation, but that's definitely not. That's not for kids, obviously. No. But yeah, that's good for. That's what I think of is when I think of OSR is that stuff, because it's good stuff and it's basic rules.
Yep,
it's deadly, but it's basic rules. And then how about Dungeon Crawl Classics?
Dungeon Crawl Classics is sort of an in-between game. It uses it in the back of the adventure in the AD&D Dungeon Master's Guide. There's a section called the Appendix N, and in that Appendix N, there's a list of inspirational reading. So, Dungeon Crawl Classics uses resources is inspired by those books, that classics sword and sorcery books, like Fritz Leiber, Elric, the Robert Howard stuff, but it uses the basic D20 system from 3rd edition, the same sort of Syndig AC. It uses the same saving throw system that 3rd edition does, but strips out feats. It strips out A lot of it skips out the skill system and sort of it's more of a modified third edition game.
So it's almost its own system.
It's almost its own thing. It's more of a modified third edition game that uses the mindset and the approach of the old school and takes its inspiration from the classic fantasy rather than more modern fantasy.
Okay. So that would be
It's sort of like an in between.
Yes,
I mean,
yes.
a lot of people call it an old school Renaissance game.
You wouldn't be wrong if you picked that up to play it.
No,
Okay.
no, you certainly wouldn't.
Maybe that was like a long yes, no, maybe. But yeah, I feel that like that's also
It's
what
sort of
I
a
think
bridge between the two, I
Yeah.
think.
You know, another one. How about Morkborg? I don't have it. It's hard to get.
Morkborg is also is a game that came out of old school Renaissance, and actually, there's a free league game called Forbidden Realm.
Oh, Forbidden Lands.
Forbidden Lands,
Which
that again comes out of the old school scene, but it's sort of like one of these games that brings newer, sort of more modern game thinking.
Mm-hmm. I like the open.
It blends the two together in I think a really nice way.
So Forbidden Lands, guys, get them to your distributors.
We talked about Forbidden Lands.
Yeah, because it's a good game, but I just can't get the core box in.
Oh, really?
I don't know if I'm doing it wrong or I got to call somebody right or if somebody knows. Put it in the comments. Please help me out. I'd like to carry it again because we had it sold out every time I got it, and it's
That's a great game. I know.
Yeah, it's a really good game. But
economy
cool.
stuff.
All right. Well, I guess that's how you get started. Just start playing.
That's the OSR.
The only
start
other thing
guide.
I would say is try to find somebody that plays old school games to show you, because there is a difference in mindset and approach to it. And if you just read the rules and then try to apply a sort of more contemporary approach to gaming to it, it's not going to work. The experience is not going to work as well.
If you saw our other podcast, I don't know if you're putting this one up second.
Yeah.
Okay. If you see the first one we did with Travis here, he talks about the
Sort of the play style.
how to play, and it's like I see that where it would become a problem if you played nothing but fifth and you picked one up and tried to play it. You would probably try to cram those or force those rules into it, and
Right.
it wouldn't work as well. So yeah, I guess have a DM that does old school, or have a player that can, hey, you're not to correct everybody, but like say, hey, this is actually.
And I have written about this on my blog a fair amount. I got a series of posts on there.
Yeah, I watched some of your stuff, and it's informative. Like it actually helped me like decide to like ask you to come over here to talk about it. And like if you really want to know more about old school stuff, just go to his blog and
Below.
he'll talk your ear off. No,
Below.
but it made sense because you were talking about something on there, and I'm like, I can't even remember. I'm sorry, I can't even remember what the subject was, but I'm like, oh my god, that makes complete sense. I'm like, I understand this now better and how it works. Maybe you could explain to me the old school Renaissance earlier, but not role play. But that's cool. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
But all right, well, thanks. Hopefully we can do more of these, and we'll see you again. If you like this stuff, like us on YouTube, subscribe. It would help us out a lot. And like us on Rumble, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Everything. We're somewhere doing something. Travis's stuff is going to be in the link. The links will be in the description. And if you really like us, subscribe to us on Patreon. It's $1 a month. It helps us out, gets us new equipment, gets Mikey some,
Clout tokens.
What?
Clout tokens.
Clout tokens. I don't know what he's talking about. But click the link. Till next time, guys.
Peace.